welcome to Conversations with Beloved and Kindred. My name is Dr. Grace Gipson, an assistant professor in the Department of African American Studies at Virginia Commonwealth University and self-proclaimed Black future feminist.
Hello, everyone. My name is Dr. Kenneth Robinson. I'm a visiting assistant professor at the University of Pittsburgh. And yeah, I love Toni Morrison.
Yes. So tell us, let's tell them about how this got started. Like, how did this come about?
So basically, we were all watching Lovecraft Country. It would come on every Sunday on HBO. We said, oh, let's watch it together. Well, not necessarily together, but we knew we were going to watch it every Sunday. And we would talk about it afterwards, either that day or on Monday. And it became this regular thing where we would do it every episode. And it was fun. It was exciting. But one thing I want to add is that it was healing for us. Absolutely. Because in the midst of all these racist acts that was going on and this, dealing with COVID and things of that nature, it was a space where we can detach a minute from all that was going on and really, as Black women, just talk about, the show and just have fun with it. So it was informative, it was entertaining, and I hope this is actually informative and entertaining for you too.
Yes, and so with that, Conversations with Beloved and Kindred is this kind of web series / video blog series that is hosted by us, who we like to call Black feminist creatives. And so through each episode that we'll talk about, we're going to talk about various creative works, whether it's literature, whether it's film, television, art, all of those types of things. Mm-hmm. But they're grounded specifically in the Black experience. And so myself and Dr. Robinson are we like to see it as we're following in the footsteps of two legends, Toni Morrison and Octavia Butler, hence Conversations with Beloved and Kindred, who in many ways, even though they're no longer with us in physical form, have filled the gaps of Black history by reimagining supernatural Black past and present, and thus giving voice to many silenced narratives. So in a way, we are continuing that legacy in this creative format. And so it's one of those things where, as Dr. Robinson was saying, Lovecraft came up, we were always talking about it, and it was like, we need to share this with everybody else. Like, let's share the wealth, as they say.
Right. And again, it's like, we want you to be a part of this conversation too.
Absolutely.
Just, in addition to watching it, which we really appreciate, also giving us feedback and your own recommendation, that would be excellent. Exactly. And before we get started with our discussions, we want to first honor the Black women we have lost this year, for various reasons, but it's important for us to recognize those we have lost. The first person I want to speak of is Leith Mullings, a wonderful anthropologist who I definitely admired and I still admire. And we recently lost her. So I want to make sure we give honor to her.
Also, Carol Sutton, who just recently passed, who was also featured in Lovecraft Country, as well as several other shows like Queen Sugar. And so here's a woman who has definitely was a part of the art and a part of the works that we are going to be diving into. So it was definitely important that we made sure to acknowledge and mention her.
And Brianna Taylor is another woman we would like to speak of. We know about her tragic, the murder of her recently, earlier this year. So we do want to give honor to Brianna Taylor.
Also a key STEM figure, Katherine Johnson, definitely from Hidden Figures. If you haven't seen it, you need to go ahead and check that out real quick. And the legacy that she has created for Black women and Black girls to be able to reach beyond the earth and go beyond into space.
Yes. And also we want to give honor to Felicia Harris. And one thing that we want to talk about is also the experiences of Black trans women and their death, because it has been an epidemic where we've had issues of trans people being killed throughout this year. And so we do want to recognize the intersectional experiences of Black people also in our work and our conversations.
As well as Felicia Harris and Brooklyn Deshauna Smith, who are also two other Black trans women who were whose lives were taken away from them this year.
So,
And I think we got one more. I think. Oh, and Lucille Bridges. We can't forget Lucille Bridges and the groundbreaking work that she and others contributed during the civil rights era.
Right, exactly. And so
what you all came for, what you all came to hear, we're going to start out Lovecraft Country. And our first one we're going to start out with episode 1, Sundown.
Yes. So one thing we want to begin with is, now we have these broken down into themes, but because of how great the show is, we may merge some of these themes,
right.
But we'll try to make sure it's as clear as possible. But the first thing we would like to talk about is the setting, because the setting played its own role in the telling of the story.
Absolutely.
And it began, well, not began, I guess the whole first episode was in Jim Crow 1955.
Yep, that's right.
And it was, which we already know during that time, Jim Crow in itself, definitely racism going on. So we already know that, okay, this is what this episode, this conversation, this series will be about. This is what we start to really hone in on.
And we're seeing that clearly with Atticus, who is the main character, featured character. He is sitting in the back of a bus that is traveling, and they are leaving Kentucky, headed north to Chicago. And so you see him, he's reading a sci-fi book, which we're going to tap into that a little bit earlier. So we're already seeing the makings of the imaginary happening immediately as the scene opens.
Right.
And we see him even kind of acknowledging how thankful he is to be leaving Jim Crow South and into this new city. So,
and you know what's interesting about that? How he was leaving Jim Crow, but little did he know, it's like Jim Crow was just not only in the South.
Right.
It was like, hey, I'm leaving Jim Crow South. Life is good. Wait, there was Jim Crow in North too.
I'll follow you. Yep.
Right. You cannot escape racism. You were, going right into, and that's another theme that we found in this series. Like, no matter how much you ran, you could not escape it. It was everywhere. Right. And even at the beginning, you see this. And so that was very, very interesting. Another thing that was interesting was on that bus ride, the Black woman said, "Oh, we just passed over a bridge named after some dead slave owner."
Right.
Exactly. Like, all these names, it goes back to the conversation on these Confederate statues and these names of these Confederate leaders and generals and things of that nature. And it's like, I really appreciate her making that point, or, the writer making sure she make that point. But exactly. And so that was interesting. And we also have to talk about him being in the military.
Very key, yes. And so we're definitely going to dive in that even further, as far as like this role of why people join the military, especially Black people and Black men, the overall impact that affects them when they're in the military, after they leave, when they come home. We know that story. We got family, we got friends who have come back from the military, who have a story to tell. And it's important that we make sure to listen to those stories, because they're quite, they have something to contribute to society. So, what else about setting? Oh, gotta mention, and this is something not just in the beginning, but throughout, we see a lot of Gordon Parks imagery is definitely circulating throughout. We're definitely seeing, once we get into Chicago, which, shout out to the Midwest, the fact that it's like summertime when they're getting into Chicago. The fire hydrants, the block parties, these are things that I can remember people talking about, having fun. That was like the joy. There's Black joy. So as much as there's Black pain, there's a lot of Black joy that we are seeing as well too.
And there's a book behind you. Is that by Bettina Love?
That is. Let me Yes. Definitely check that out, y'all. This is good reading right here.
Yes, I'm sorry, I just had to throw that in there. But yes, it is important that, in the midst of us dealing with all that's going on, just like this entire podcast and what we did before we started this podcast, there are moments where we still experience Black joy. We still live. We still find ways to entertain ourselves, to really just enjoy living and
Right.
surviving. And so thank you for bringing up the hydrant, because that is definitely important. And even in the midst of all this, we have to talk about, I'm going to skip ahead just slightly because we're on Black Joy, in regards to the block party and Rosetta Thorpe. Oh my gosh.
Yes. The
So,
song. Woo,
so
so
what was it? Tall, skinny Papa.
there we go. Yep.
And this is okay. So when I first saw the show, when we first saw it, I was like, oh, she's just playing the song Enjoy Your Life. But the second time, I was like, that's familiar.
You like, I know that song.
Like I know, but I could not. And so come to find out, we see Rosetta Thorpe. Well, not see her, but Ruby is performing Rosetta Thorpe's song with the guitar, which she was known for. And I appreciate that image of a Black woman, because not a lot of people know about how legendary she was and is, how she was a forerunner in music.
Right.
But I was really happy that Lovecraft Country really spoke about that at this moment of joy.
Right.
Where, yes, he left the South to go to a new Jim Crow, but there was still fun going on. And actually, that was really the last night of fun that they made.
It really was like the last, as we would, talked about before, the last stress-free, drama-free, carefree moment in the entire series.
Right.
not just in that episode, the entire series. From that moment, there is like, we're constantly trying to get to the next day.
Right.
Trying to survive to the next day, the next moment, the next hour, and so we see that a lot with Lovecraft. And so
you see that.
Yeah. Other things too with the setting that also taps into the history. And this is what I really loved about Lovecraft, was they brought in historical figures that if you didn't know about them before, you're going to know about them now. So one thing in particular was the bar in Chicago was named after Denmark, BC. And it was like, yes, okay, so we pulling in way, way back, bringing in the past so that people in that present time of 1955 can connect to something, So this old Black owned, Black naming is like prevalent throughout, for sure.
Yes. And even along that same vein of knowing what's going on, knowing your history, the music telling that story too. Like you have to, the music is not just there for the background. The music tells its own story in the midst of this. In addition to Rosetta Thorpe, we hear Nina Simone.
Yes.
We even hear speeches from James Baldwin.
Yeah.
So it's important that as you watch this show, you listen, because it's telling a story at the same time. Right. And going again with setting, there was one point where was doing James Baldwin's speech or conversation. And what was the name of it? I forgot the name. Did we put it down?
I think we put,
I'll get back to that.
Yeah, we'll get back to it.
Yes. But it was about African Americans and being in America.
Right.
And while he was speaking this, there was this image of this white family. It's this white family. And it was about, okay, the highest form of living. And it was a white family on this billboard, and underneath the billboard was Black people in line.
Right. And
so it really spoke of, to achieve this highest level of living in America, you have to be white.
White is the ideal.
This ideal of what it should be to have this American dream. What does it mean to be an American and to have this American dream? What do you look like to achieve this? What do you have to look like to achieve this dream? And again, in the backdrop of this image, you hear James Baldwin's speech about being Black in America.
Right.
And how it's problematic.
That we will hear a Black key figure critiquing white American society. And it's done in a moment where Blackness is centered, but whiteness is trying to be, the thing that engages and surrounds it. But you have a voice telling you, critiquing you. You have the imagery of Blackness being as center focus, kind of like stepping away from whiteness. And that's something that, once again, another thing that is as a common thread through not just this first episode, but every episode, you know, going forward.
Because you got to keep in mind, again, joy ends here.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, I hate to say it that way. You're going to see moments where there is another moment. Yeah, just little pockets of joy, just little pockets of joy. But I think this is very important that, you know, you see how they were happy, but then something happens and it just becomes, well, it doesn't just happen, but I can't give it away the story, give away the storyline yet. Another thing about the beginning, it was with aliens and it was like in this supernatural realm, and then Jackie Robinson shows up with a baseball bat and you're like, what is going on?
Where'd he come from?
And you know, he was asleep because he was on the bus. You know, everyone gets tired. Right. And was he fighting like aliens?
Yes, aliens, show gods, all these things. And you know, like, so we're seeing Afrofuturism at its finest, like
at the beginning
here.
Yes.
All these different levels of future, all these different levels of the past coming into the present, into the future.
Right.
You know, because it's like Jackie Robinson, we say that's the present? Are we saying that's the future and he's coming back? Or like, right. Like how do we even like digest that or dissect that in that moment?
And in that one moment, so, okay, I'm not going to rush away, but it was almost like they both were fighting racism with we will talk about it later. But again, you know, fighting racism as this monster. So even going back to why we even did this podcast and our influences, how this reimagining of the Black experience.
Yes.
Not just simply saying, okay, this is racism as is, like, okay, let's reimagine this in this other world, supernatural perspective. So it was very interesting. That was, it took me a couple of times to figure out what was happening. Mm-hmm. But that's going to come back too. Again, every scene matters. So you have to make sure that you don't miss anything.
So this is a show that you have to, you know, have whatever your drinks, your popcorn, your snacks, you need to have everything with you, because you look away, you're going to miss something. There's going to be where you know, you're like, wait, hold on. I forgot that. I didn't see that. Or moments where we were talking about before, where watching it like a second and a third time, things that we missed.
Right.
Like, oh, I didn't even peep that the first time. So it's definitely one of those worthy of watching multiple times to catch things that you may have definitely missed. So
that is true. That is true.
I want to definitely touch on the idea of the sundown. Like, so the episode is named Sundown. You know, we're seeing them when you're talking about the James Baldwin scene. They're driving into or out of a sundown town, county, all of that, you know, and the importance of the, you know, that existence. And even to this day, we still see kind of like sundown type.
Right. Yeah. It's not completely ended.
Right.
It would be nice if it did, but it's not over. So what you're speaking about in regards to how they knew the exact time of sunset, because that's how much their life was in peril. Right. It was like, you got 30 seconds. We have 30 seconds to beat it. And it was very interesting because at this point, they were driving to really get Atticus' father, Montrose. They were trying to rescue him because Montrose sent a letter to Atticus and said something about, you know, this is where I am. And Atticus wanted to save his father. Exactly. And so they were heading to save his father. And they were in Devon County.
Yep, Devon County.
And so they stopped for a minute, and then a police officer showed up. And, you know, the conversation was, you know, of course, it was filled with racism. And he said, you need to leave because this is a sundown county. Mm-hmm. You need to leave this county by sundown. And next thing you know, they got in their car and they tried to head to the next county. Now, at the same time, the cop was following them, and they knew that they could not go above the speed limit because they would be stopped and then the sun would go down. Mm-hmm. So they were trying to speed out at the speed limit of 35.
Yeah, 35. Yeah.
And
they had 6 minutes left. They had 6 minutes left.
6 minutes. So their heart was racing, but they weren't. So you had Uncle George in the seat counting down times like, we have a minute left.
Yeah.
30 seconds. 10 seconds, but watch your speed. And it was great because it was like, okay, they were excited. Like, we're going, well, no, they were not. They did not think they were going to make it.
Right.
They were like, we got to get out of here. Then they made it. They were excited. But like we said earlier, you can't outrun racism.
Nope.
They ran right into another blockade of cops.
Exactly.
And they're like, wait.
And like, you know, like I say, you can't outrun racism. You're only going to get pockets of joy. You're going to only have a few moments where you get to realize, like, I'm safe for this period of time. You know, the fact that you're hoping that when you leave one destination, you can get to the next one.
Right.
You know, you're only hoping that maybe I can survive. You know, all of these things are running through their mind. Instead of this being what could be seen as a family trip,
right,
it is really a this adventure, this escapade of like, we just got to get from point A to point B,
right,
and from point B to C, and so on and so on. So definitely want to make sure we shout out. So Atticus, who is played by Jonathan L. Majors. Uncle George is played by who? Your favorite?
Courtney B. Vance.
Yes, and Letty, who was played by Journey Smollett Bell. And so these are prime key actors who are and actresses who are definitely doing the work, and definitely want to make sure we shout them out in the episode and acknowledge their existence in the TV series.
Yes, they really did.
What you got next for us?
I think one thing I'm gonna go back to is, who is H.P. Lovecraft?
Who is H.P. Lovecraft?
Who is he, and why does he matter, and does he really matter?
Well, we ain't gonna give him too much time, but
no. Matter of fact, H.P. Lovecraft was a writer, and Atticus mentioned a poem by him. It's called "On the Creation of the N-Word." I'm not going to say the word. And it really spoke about, this particular poem spoke about how, you know, these fair people were made first, and then the leftovers were these, you know, the N-words. And he spoke about it briefly in there. So when you think about Lovecraft, that's who Lovecraft, where Lovecraft Country comes from. And in his books, he actually spoke about the settings, which, well, I think it was Artem. It was Artem.
Right.
And in Lovecraft's books, his horror series or whatnot, most of them were situated within Artem. And so in this particular show, you see how it's depicted as a racist place.
Yeah.
Because yes, that's who Lovecraft Country is. I mean, Lovecraft is. We're done.
Yeah, we don't want to give him too much more time because he doesn't deserve that.
No.
The only thing he deserves is the fact that the book, which you have show them your copy of the book also. The book becomes kind of like a critique of him, of H.P. Lovecraft. So I would recommend, you know, you could even read the book side by side, you know, with the TV series. You're
not going to miss any, like, I mean, they're not parallel. Are they parallel?
In some ways they're parallel, and in some ways they're not, but it doesn't distract from the other.
Right. And so even speaking about books, let's talk about the importance of literature, because we just, you know, finished with.
There we go.
First of all, it took a second time to really get deep into this, okay? We already know that Uncle George and Atticus are avid readers.
Avid.
Like regular readers. Like they're reading everything under the sun. And one thing, before we go into what they were reading, you remember Montrose was like, read respectable literature.
And Montrose is Atticus's father. Yes,
Atticus's father. And it's like, well, what is considered respectable literature?
Yes.
And one thing I really love about this, it really, again, looks at Black people in nuanced ways where we're not just this one way, and what is considered respectable. And it is important that knowledge is vast and that we don't just focus on one way of reading or one particular type of genre. So I really love the fact that they explored science fiction and things of that nature, because it actually came in handy throughout the entire show. So his idea, respectable literature, I'm assuming, they didn't really speak about what that meant for him, but it was about not really reading sci-fi or anything like that. But knowledge is power, and they were reading, you know, like earlier in the show, when he was on the bus, he read The Princess
A Princess of Mars. Mm-hmm.
Yes, which is a sci-fi novel.
Sci-fi novel, fantasy, all of that. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yes. And then, you know, they read, what was it, Dracula.
Right.
No,
Mm-hmm.
they did read Dracula, yes. Which will come into handy. We'll talk about that in 2 seconds. And also the Count of Monte Cristo by Alexander Dumas. First of all, I really love that book.
I do too. Oh my God.
I love that. I was like, yes, yes.
And that was what Montrose considered respectable literature.
Yes.
So to him, Dumas was respectable literature, whereas fantasy, sci-fi, no, you don't need to be reading, especially not as a Black man.
Right.
You shouldn't be reading what he saw that as garbage, what he saw that as, not substantive, which is interesting, because when we're talking about Afrofuturism, like sci-fi, the fantasy, speculative fiction, magical realism, these are things that are attached to Blackness in so many different ways, and have often excluded Blackness. But, much like Octavia Butler, Toni Morrison, we make sure to reinsert the imaginary in Blackness, and that they work together and not seen on the margins of that. So
and that's why I like Afrofuturism. Yes. It shows that Blackness is not just one way.
Right.
Like, we can depict the Black experience, or we can just talk about things that are not even related to Blackness. We could just talk. We could do anything. And so that's one reason I really love Afrofuturism, because it allows us to do that. And you see that in literature. And yeah.
Yeah. So, and it's even the fact of looking at what is respectable literature, and the fact that they're bringing in the Count of Monte Cristo. Some people still don't realize that Alexander Dumas is Black. So, even bringing that in, although this is what you're saying as respectable literature, you're still also reacquainting people, reintroducing people, and showcasing, literature, and making sure that we are part of the canon, as well too.
Exactly. And even that's a good point, and we can explore this later. The fact that a lot of people don't know that a Black man did this great work.
Right.
So by not even speaking on his name or his race or his ethnicity, period, it's like you're leaving us to think that he's a white man who wrote this because it's such great work, as though we're not able to do great work. So it is important to know that he was a Black man.
Right, right.
And he wrote The Count of Monte Cristo, one of the greatest books ever written.
Absolutely.
I mean, there's many great books, but I really love it.
It's classic material.
It's classic.
Yeah. So let's slide into. So we've introduced the show. We've brought in. We're seeing how the importance of a lot of historical figures, a lot of historical connections. Let's take a look at some of like the relationships between the characters themselves, and how they are super important, and will. This first episode is the beginnings of what we will see carried out throughout the series. So definitely we're seeing familiar relationships already from the start and from the beginning. The fact
Black
that
love.
Atticus is looking for his father.
That
in itself.
Yeah. Looking for his father, and also the black love. And you spoke about that before, like, the importance of unapologetic Black love. It was a lot for Dee at one moment, but it's all right.
Yeah.
It was all right. And even at that same time, when she was reunited with her cousin.
Who's that? Dee and
Atticus.
Yeah, those are their cousins. Yeah.
Cousins. So reunited with their cousins. So, like you said, the importance of familial relationships, and in that same token, the importance of community.
Yes.
And how throughout the show we see people traveling together.
Right.
And this need to never be alone, to always be around each other.
Yep.
And so we see how community is forged, even with Letitia coming with them on the trip. And Letitia's not related to them
at all.
And actually, they were going to drop Letitia off and be like, go with your brother, enjoy your life.
Right.
But like, look, we're here. Good night, Mm-hmm. But even how those relationships are formed. And it really speaks of the importance of community in the Black community.
Definitely. And regardless of who you are, whether by blood or not, like, we're still family.
Exactly.
In various ways. Yeah.
And also it spoke about it as survival technique during racism.
Yeah.
Don't go alone. Do not move alone. Mm-hmm. You need to bring someone with you. You don't know what's going to happen. You need to have someone with you. And I feel like that was a very important part as well. And then we have to talk in the same token. Did you want to talk about Black womanhood?
Absolutely. Have to. I mean, the series is called Conversations with Beloved and Kindred, and
Right.
Toni Morrison, Octavia Butler.
We Black feminists. Okay. Let's do this. Okay. So in that, never traveling alone, traveling with someone else. At one point, well, let's go back to this idea of even traveling and exploring.
Yes.
Uncle George has a company about safe travel guide for Black people.
The Green Book. Mm-hmm.
Yes, like the Green Book. And well, it is the Green Book for the show. And basically, the Green Book or the safe travel guide. What did he call it?
The safe the Safe Negro Travel Guide.
The Safe Negro Travel Guide. It was a place. Well, it provided a listing of places where it was safe for Black people to go.
Mm-hmm.
And Hippolyta, say the name right? Okay, good. Oh, I'm working on it. Hippolyta wanted to go by herself. She wanted to travel and do her own notes versus having to type it up when Uncle George does it or make sure that it's put in the book. She wanted to actually go on the road. At the beginning of the episode, he was like, "No, it's too dangerous. I don't want you to go by yourself."
Right.
And even toward the time in which they were actually going to travel to get Montrose, Atticus' father, her and Dee, they were providing all the logistics for the travel. They were like, "You have everything you need. You're good. We make sure everything is safe." Right. And even then, he did not make any type of statement about, "Hey, you can come with us anytime," or blah, blah, blah. Right. It wasn't until later when he said, "We can go on the next trip."
Right.
When they were already getting Montrose.
Mm-hmm.
And that speaks to, again, how he did not see her as being able to go on her own. Right. Now, granted, it's still this interplay of never travel alone because of racism, and especially his knees were taken, or he was beaten, so he had issues with his knees because of it. He didn't want Hippolyta to have to deal with the same thing.
Right.
But she was like, "I can do this."
Yeah.
But when he said "we," she was happy. She was like, "Yay, we can go."
And at that moment, it's kind of like this when you say "we." A part of me, I'll be honest, it was like, "Oh yes, okay, we." But then when I really deep down thought, I was like, "Wait, so you're saying that the only way that I can do this is if I have to go with you?"
Right.
Like, that's what makes this acceptable. And so then I said, "Wait a minute, okay, so why can't it be myself and Dee?" Or even the fact that Letty, who was
right.
a part of the Southside Futuristic Science Fiction Club, like,
why exactly.
A man had to be with them,
right?
But the only good that she could provide was like assisting and preparing, and not necessarily leading or making the trip.
Exactly.
Her leadership being on display. So.
And it's like, sometimes having to settle for the crumbs.
Right.
Like, I'll just, at least I get to go.
Exactly.
And that was a very powerful moment too, because it was like, she can do this by herself. She even knew how you should prepare for this trip.
Right.
And she always goes over the notes. She is good. But, I'll just accept this for now. It's okay. Yeah. I'm glad.
And know that Hippolyta and Dee, their daughter, this is just the beginnings of what we will see of the gifts that they have and that they provide to the entire series. Mm-hmm. Right? We definitely see Dee, who has this comic book that goes along with her travel guide, with the travel guide that her father prepares. Mm-hmm. And so it's like, we have to pay attention to the gifts that they are bringing to the story. Like, yes, Atticus is the main character, but Dee, Hippolyta provides something that really grounds the story, really grounds the series. And so I can't help but noticing that we're seeing the preparation of what is to later come between those two. Mm-hmm. And the fact that, I'm not going to spoil too much on Dee, but you got to pay attention to the kids, because kids have a lot that they can contribute. They have a lot to say, and we can't forget about them. So,
right.
I'll just say, pay attention to the children.
Yes, please. But I like how you did that. Like, we're not gonna give it away, but it's key.
Yeah.
And even at one time when he called and said, okay, we can go, Dee was on the phone first.
Right.
And she was telling him about this new story that she had. And he was like, yeah, okay. Very dismissive of it in the conversation. He was like, yeah, good job. Can you put your mother on the phone? And at the same time, the mother was looking through a telescope at the universe.
Yeah.
So she was already like in a whole different area of life. Like they were imagining, they were doing things even when the men were gone.
Right. Right.
But she even, there was one moment where she spoke about seeing a star or something. And he was like, great. So you want to come with me? Again, dismissing her talents along the way.
Right.
And so even though he wasn't doing it in a malicious way, he was still suppressing their gifts. Absolutely. While he was exploring, granted he was looking for his brother. So
yeah. Ooh, I tell you, there is so much, that comes from just this episode. And this is just episode 1. We got episode 2 following up here real quick. Like this idea that we're going to see a lot from Letty. We're going to see a lot of what she brings to the table from her experiences, her personal experiences that she has. We even tap into a lot of her religious groundings, her beliefs, and kind of what grounds her as a woman, as a Black woman. And it really will, that will carry on throughout the series as well. Her faith is really definitely put on present. And I appreciate the showrunners and the writers inserting that from this Black female perspective, and it is not seen in a way that is seen to be funny or made to be made up or to be a joke. It's a very serious passion that she has. So yeah.
Right. And even going back to Letitia before we move to the next episode, you bring up a good point, because even there was a moment where monsters were chasing them.
Yes.
And they went to the cabin, and basically, conversations had yada yada. And at one point, the police officer who was bit by a monster, mind you, said, okay, I want one of you guys to go out and get the car or whatever.
Right.
It wasn't their idea. It was I think it was Uncle George who brought it up, or and he said, one of you guys, the white racist police officer, one of you should get the car. And Atticus said, I'll go. Right. And he said, no, I don't want you to go. You're too smart. You may do whatever. I want her to go, meaning Letitia. And it spoke to how he was trying to disempower her, thinking that she's inferior, that she won't dare to run. But it was very interesting because even in the midst of the conversation, the brief conversation between Atticus and Letitia, she talked about how, I used to be a star of the track team.
Right.
So I'm going to run. You ain't worry about that.
Don't sleep on me.
Right, like don't sleep. And I could get these monsters. We will be racing. And then she did outrun them. FYI, she had the right arms. And then at the same time, she was praying. She did the Lord's Prayer. And she prayed like she would be good on this run. And then she was gone. And so again, she felt empowered even when he tried to disempower her. She reminded herself how great she was. And then she pulled on her faith as part of her strength.
Yes.
And that was it was welcoming. It was like, yeah, people would try to disempower you, but you have people behind you. You have your faith. Use it. And she used both of them. She had the encouragement from Atticus, even though he was a little bit emotional. The encouragement from Atticus, she had her faith, and she had her skills, because clearly not only was she in the sci-fi club, she was also a track star. That girl had skills. That woman had skills. Let's not call a girl.
Yes. Right. And to close out with this particular episode, I think it's important. We mentioned earlier in the episode naming of those who we had lost. And we both, as Black women scholars who both have our PhDs, it's important that naming and recognizing who we are is pronounced, and that it is on front and center. I'm not a girl. I'm not this Black girl. I'm not just this her or this one. So my name is Dr. Grace D. Gipson, or you want to call me Grace, however, but I'm not just a simple-minded person, or you are Dr. Keniqua Robinson. And so it's important that naming and acknowledging is put on display. And that's something that we would make sure to do with each episode, whether we're talking about Lovecraft or another TV series or another a piece of art, naming and acknowledging will always be a priority for us.
Right, exactly. And I'm glad you brought that up, even as we conclude this first episode, because that is key. We come to find out, even I had to get my life together with saying Hippolyta's name. It's important that we say her name. And I know it's a fictitious character, whatnot, but it was still important that I got her name because her name means something.
Right.
That is unique. It is amazing. And just like I want people to say my name correctly, I should even put in effort to say her name correctly.
Right.
And so, yes, naming is important. And again, like, Dr. Gipson was saying, I'm not a girl. I've having been a girl for years.
Right.
Same with Letitia. She was like, are you serious? My name is Letitia Lewis. Yeah. She had another word in between her name, but we're not going to say that.
So, yes. So Sundown, episode 1. I know we gave you a lot for y'all to digest in this.
We give you everything.
But trust me, like these are just things that we want you to grab hold to that will secure you into the whole series. And so we might as well just go ahead and dive into episode 2 so you all have a lot to chew on and digest and go back and talk to your friends and everybody and say, okay, all right, y'all, let's get these into the system and make it work. So
yes, the name of it is Whitey's on the Moon.
Yes, and that will come up too. So that's the other thing. I really loved how every episode was poignant to something historical, to something that we can refer back to. And trust me, we'll bring up what the connection is to Whitey's on the Moon if you don't already know. So
you need to, first of all, just go listen.
Yeah.
If you don't feel like listening, read the lyrics. You need to do that. Forget the show. Just do it for your own sake and understand what he's speaking of.
And again, what you're speaking of is Gil Scott Heron. So if you didn't know Gil Scott Heron, Whitey's on the Moon, yes, definitely got to get that
first. Like, period. Like, take your break right now. Pause. Go back and go find it on the internet. I'll give you some time for that. So, at the beginning of this episode, at this point, they've arrived in Artem. They arrived at the house, and everybody's like, "Welcome, you're home to Atticus."
This massive house, by the way.
It's a mansion. It's not a joke. Their whole car was messed up during monster time, so they walked there. Okay. And at the beginning of this episode, they're in their own rooms in this nice house, and you had Uncle George. He was about to go crazy because he saw all these books. And again,
books, yes.
Yes, he's like, "Oh my God, do you see all these books?" He was just picking up books. And I think that's very important too, because again, knowledge is power. And we see this throughout the show, how even, fiction novels and things of that nature can bring in a different form of knowledge that you would use, like in the last episode with the Dracula thing. And I'm not gonna go in detail about that because we have more to speak of. Letitia, she was all about clothes, which, it was very interesting because they all did fit.
They did. Like, why is that?
And why did she question that?
Yeah.
But that's fine. She was excited.
Happy. Here we experience another pocket of joy.
Very small. I mean, the pocket, I can't even say pocket. I would just say like, it's, and then you had, I'll go to that in 2 seconds. You had Atticus in the room just like, ain't nothing right. Something wrong.
Yeah.
And then they all come out and Uncle George is like, "Y'all, these books." And then just come out, "Look at my outfit." And then he's like, "They all fit though. Why?"
Right.
He's like, "I don't care, but do you see this shirt with these pants?"
But it's okay though.
No worries. And then come to find out, it's because their memory was gone.
Yeah.
And something, of course, this is sci-fi, so I don't know if we should say witchcraft, but
a spell, some kind of spell.
Some type of spell, right? Where their memory was gone. Mm-hmm. And we find that out a little later, not necessarily as to why, but we'll discuss that. But at the same time, William comes in the hallway while Atticus is the only one looking crazy. Everybody else was with joy. Right. But William comes, like, everybody's like, "My outfit and my books." Like, Atticus just needs to get together, like, drink some water. And so William comes in and they have this conversation. And one important thing that he brings up, he was like, first, Breathwaite. What? I never seen
Breathwaite, yeah.
Who owns the house, and I don't know if we know the details about that yet, so I'm not gonna say anything. But he owns the house. They say he used to have a shipping company.
Right. Well, we all know what shipping is code for.
And if you didn't know, Letitia reminded you, code for slavery.
There we go.
FYI, in case audience, you didn't understand, but code for slavery. But yes, and he was like, he treated all his workers very well.
All them very well. What does that mean? You'll see though.
I can't give it away too quick because I almost did. But one thing I want to go back to again at this point, they're excited. Even at this point, because they forgot, or the spell was that they should forget. But again, what is this importance? Why is it important to forget? Yes. And it goes back to this conversation of, slavery happened so long ago. We should forget that it happened, or we should move on. And one thing that started at the in the first episode was the past is living. Yes. And so we start seeing this trend again, where it's like, no, we can't forget. It's a part of our lived experience.
Right.
And so in the midst of them forgetting, only Uncle George and Letitia, they were able to experience this joy.
Right.
But Atticus didn't forget. He was like, what is wrong with everybody? And at the same time, we want to talk a bit about the military and how they said, oh, why is he so sad and frustrated? He was a veteran. He must have been shell-shocked. It was like, does anyone remember what happened yesterday?
So if we think about going back to that conversation on the military, it's like, so there's always these preconceived notions, these negative stereotypes that are placed on people that come out of the military, particularly Black men. They went crazy, that they lost it, that they, something happened to them that, we need to fix them,
right,
because of something that happened to them. And it's like, no, these are real situations that happened. This was real trauma that took place. And we have to uncover that. We have to, interrogate that. We have to ask the questions, why is that? We have to, how do we heal from that? Instead of just placing this Band-Aid, throwing them somewhere and just say, okay, get better. And it's like, how do I get better?
Exactly. And I think, really quick segue on that one was this conversation of how we would look at individual soldiers as if they are the problem.
Right.
And we are not critiquing the system that placed them in this situation. So we have to be mindful of where the critique goes. And so I think that I'm glad you brought that up because, when we think about veterans, we have to think about the service they did in this country, but also where are they now?
Right.
And we can't forget about them now that they're back.
Yep.
We have to always be understanding and sensitive to their situations.
Exactly.
And not saying that, oh, we got to pity them, but just understand them. Yeah. It's just about simply understanding what they went through and not just saying, oh, they're crazy, they're dismissed, and we should just push them aside as though they don't matter, because they do matter. And if we're talking about Black Lives Matter, Black Lives matter, including Black veterans. So, not take that away, but it's a little bit passionate amount to really have this conversation. But to go back, now they were still forgetting as they went touring the town or whatever. Touring. Now Atticus again, he's like, but what? Y'all, what's going on? You need to be cautious. The reason why it's important not to forget, because you never know what other trap you'll be put in. You have to remember so that we can know how to move.
Exactly.
You can't forget what happened to us, but it's too late. The spell eventually came off of them, didn't it?
It did.
It did eventually. Yes.
Let's see. What else was something that popped up that really got my attention?
About the KK. Oh, go ahead. Which one?
Yeah. That's also good. Yeah. So we meet a character, Christina, who we've seen her a couple times. We don't know who she is until we finally kind of get this. Okay, who is Christina? She kind of in some ways has saved them some parts. She's this supposed ally, maybe not. So yeah, and they're having these conversations about race and class. We're having these conversations, and an interesting point that comes up between her and Atticus is when Atticus sees some of this wizardry that's going on. He was like, I didn't know that the KKK, and the wizardry, wizards and all of that, come to, I'm paraphrasing, but he's basically talking about wizardry, KKK, and so forth. And Christina points out, oh, no, we would never be like the KKK. They're too poor. So you have this white woman who is talking about another white organization, and class comes into here. So not only have we been looking at race, but we putting in class into this situation, which, for both of us, intersectionality. So now we talking about multiple things here overlapping and, coming together.
I really like that, because that is, she was like, the KKK are the poor people.
Mm-hmm.
You facilitate our ideas. We the architects of it.
Right.
Because even at later on, her father, was that her father?
Yes, it was her father. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Samuel. Mm-hmm.
Samuel. He was talking about the power of Adam, and Adam is supposed to be this person who creates this hierarchy of things, put things in rightful order.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Rightful place, and he considers himself Adam. This white man is Adam. So he's like, I put things in their rightful place. So even if you look at race and class and the conversation with Christina and Atticus, you see how they're the architects, as the rich architects of racism. But then you see the KKK as the part of the implementation of these ideas.
Right.
So like that's again, race and class becomes very important. And at that, was it the same conversation about how she wants to be friends?
Yeah, so going back to this wanting to be an ally. And so this is something that I feel like I don't want to say struggle, but it's something that I deal with even now, with in this particular moment is, white allyship, and like, do I trust you? And how are you trying to be an ally? And, Atticus actually says something that really is perfect for how I feel. You could talk the talk, you can walk the walk, you can do all that, but I need to see action.
Right.
Because your actions is what I need to see, not your promises.
Right. I mean, that was nice, because even she was like, but then I do all this other stuff. He was like, one thing we have to keep in mind, to be an ally, it implies action.
Right.
It is not
consistent.
It's consistent. You need to always learn. You need to always do. It's not just, I did 2 things in the past and I have like 3 Black friends. That's not what an ally is. Mm-hmm. And that is what Atticus, just like you were saying, Dr. Gipson, that is what Atticus wants to speak on.
Yep.
It is critical that if you are an ally, you prove it.
Right.
And honestly, you may have to constantly prove, because racism hasn't, first of all, we don't even know what a post-racial society is, because it never existed. It's not, we don't know what it looks like. So because we're constantly dealing with racism, as an ally, you have to constantly fight to prove that you are an ally.
Right.
And that's why I like Atticus. Well, no, I don't like Atticus. You like Atticus.
You have an indifferent feeling about him.
Indifferent. I mean, I appreciate the fact that he's in the show. Like, he's a great actor, like excellent. Like, I tell you, he is fantastic. We'll talk about later. Well, no, after watching it again, I kind of like him, because he made some good points. And apparently when I first watched it, I don't know what was going on. But one thing that you brought up before, Dr. Gipson, is about this idea of survival and always escaping. Yeah. This need for escape, where it was never about thriving, but always wanting to escape.
Yeah.
And
and we're like, and this goes back to like looking at Bettina Love's book, and how, like, we're ingrained to think about surviving and not thriving.
Right.
And shout out to Dr. Love on this idea of, we have to move past that. And even I think as scholars, as Black people, as just humans, we have to move past surviving, and how do we thrive, regularly thrive in whatever it is that we're doing. And so it's, I think some of that thriving comes through the knowledge that each of them possess, particularly George and Atticus, in their knowledge of books and text and so forth, and reading. For Letty, I would say it's her practical lived experience, is what kind of helps to contribute to her thriving, not just surviving.
Right.
So, even, though intelligence for them was dangerous because of particularly the incident in the Sun in episode 1, but it's also powerful because there's an incident and a moment where, because they had read Dracula and knew about Dracula, it saved their life.
That was so like,
so
what happens when Dracula is bit?
When someone is bit by a vampire,
Oh,
so
I say right, Dracula. But you when someone is bit by a vampire, what happens? And that's how they knew what would happen with the monster.
Yeah.
And then, so again, this whole idea of knowledge power in the first episode, just to briefly speak about that, the police officer said Atticus was a smart, N-word.
Yeah.
And that was a problematic. So just like Dr. Gipson said, intelligence is dangerous. Yeah, it is powerful. And so we also see it a little bit later with the Count to Monte Cristo, but also when they had the conversation or the black tie event for the men of the organization. And everything was going on, everybody was talking, enjoying their life and their dinner. And Uncle George, who read the book, I think it was the book of Adam?
I think so. We have to go back to provide resources on that, but yeah.
I need to be specific about that. But he read it and he knew the rules. He was like, if you're a descendant of this person, what you could
control, you could mandate the order.
Right. And so, because he read, he was like, so if you are not a direct descendant, leave.
You don't need to be here.
You don't have to be here. Enjoy your life. And so that's when Atticus stood up, because Atticus was the last descendant.
Yep.
So he could control.
Exactly.
Then with that, it was a lot of things, because they then tried to escape after that.
Right. So before the escaping, after the escaping, that's when we come back to the attempting sacrificing, of Atticus. And but even before that, one thing I wanted to add to what you were talking about with intelligence and being dangerous. You have Uncle George, who is a Prince Hall Mason. So here we're seeing the introduction of Prince Hall Masonry, and even talking about how race played an issue in the creation of the Prince Hall Masons.
Right.
He's schooling these, folks of Adam, however they're being referred to, and saying, you didn't even want to let him in.
Right.
However, that's okay. We created this in this space, and we're still here. You're gonna respect me still because of that. So sometimes we have to create our own,
right,
when we're not accepted in another space, and that's fine, and I'm all for that.
It speaks of Black agency.
It does. It really
does. We're not just passive participants in our oppression. Yep. We're like, okay, well, since it's existing, we have our own. We can create our own. We can do for ourselves. We can even thrive in our own pockets of time.
Yes.
We can still do this. Even if you don't want us, we have, Prince Hall Masons. We're okay. Enjoy your time. Or, okay, well, we can't go to your places. Well, we have a guide that tells us where we can go. And this guide in real life, the Green Book, included beaches and things of that nature, different places where joy can happen. Dr. Antoinette Jackson actually has a great book about Black joy that was going on. And that is important, because this whole series speaks about Black agency.
It does.
So, historically, when you hear conversations, even the conversations about slavery, like there was no resistance.
No.
What?
The Denmark VC boy that we see. Let me remind you that we weren't just passive, that we weren't just saying we're going to be a part of this shipping organization. Yep. No. No, we had our own right. We knew how to delegate. We knew how to lead. We knew how to escape, and not escape just to be escaping, but to escape so we could have a better life.
Right.
We're trying to settle for this.
And just because you want to let us in, we'll create our own.
Exactly.
One where we can be free and liberated.
Exactly.
One where we can love each other. So again, it really speaks of this Black agency.
Right.
And the reason why we're even still here.
Exactly.
And how we made it. So yeah, I just want to digress for a couple minutes.
There was a couple of things that definitely got a touch on. So I want to go back to that forgetting. Yes. And that piece of, how we forget things. And so how there's a moment where Tulsa is brought up. It's a very brief moment, but the fact that they're in that brief moment of mentioning Tulsa, we make sure we don't forget Tulsa.
Right, right,
And
right.
sometimes you don't have to say a lot. You just have to say, once again, that acknowledging, saying the name of what happened in Tulsa.
Right.
And even if you've seen another HBO show that was on Watchmen where they talk about Tulsa,
Yeah.
it's so important that the significance of what happened in Tulsa, about memory, about trauma, about surviving,
Right.
about being able to hold on to something that somebody is trying to take away from you, holding
Right.
on to wealth, that was deserved, that we were deserved of, that we were owed to.
And we talk about that too, because that comes up later.
Yes,
In the
yes.
series. We can't talk about that, but that was good. I'm glad you brought that up though, because that was good. That was good. And I really think this is that going along the same vein, it's almost what it is, just like how we say hashtag say her name, say their name, say his name, because it is about not forgetting. It's about remembering. And not just remembering for remembrance sake, but remembering so that we can improve, so that tomorrow could be better, so that we can change these institutions. And so again, going back to forgetting in the beginning, it's like forgetting didn't serve Letitia or Uncle George.
Nope.
It made them happy, yes,
right.
But at what cost?
Exactly.
And then even their happiness and their forgetfulness made them critique their own brother. Well, Atticus.
Yes.
And so again, it goes back to the importance of remembering.
Yes.
And another thing I want to speak on is this idea of Black women empowerment.
Yes.
The beauty. Yeah. And I think you brought that up in regards to how Letitia, first of all, her outfits were always on point. Throughout the show, she's going to be messed up, but her hair is still on point.
She still looks amazing, even when she has gone through something.
You'll be like, you fell down all those stairs, but your hair.
You still look good.
You still look great. Congrats. I'm sorry you fell downstairs, but we'll talk about that next time we talk about stuff, which is not a part of this episode. But then you have Hannah, who was running away from a fire in that flashback-ish scene.
Mm-hmm.
And she had dressed well with the book, like,
Hannah is an ancestor. So we're seeing the connection of ancestors coming back into the fold. We're seeing, the remembrance of them. So they're not going to let you forget.
Right.
So we'll come back again, later, as far as her significance, but know that she is an ancestor, an important ancestor to the series.
And you see how time is like, I love this conversation or this interplay of the past, present, future. Right. It's all played against each other and with each other. And it really shows a different perspective of Blackness.
Yes.
Our experiences. And you will see this so much as we keep going.
Yeah, time travel and, honoring those who came before, connecting pieces, finishing the puzzle. There's, all of that. Everything is going to comes together with that. Right. Because then it's like, I'm not going to talk about that today. I almost did. I really almost gave, but it's okay. Another thing that we should speak about is the vulnerability of Black women in this show. There is one point, it was between Letitia and Atticus. Well, not really Atticus. It was apparition. Apparition. Okay, so that's pretty much what that is. Because at this point, they're all in their rooms, and they're living out their greatest fear. Yes. You had Atticus living out his time in the Korean War. Correct. And he was fighting with someone. Then you had Uncle George, who was dancing with someone. I'm not gonna say nothing else because I know too much, so I don't want to say who she is, but I almost did. Dancing with someone, and she brings up Tulsa as well as children. Yes, and that is part of the secrecy of the family. Mm-hmm. So that was his worst fear. Right. At the same time, you had Letitia, whose worst fear was, sexual abuse. Being alone, being abandoned. Being alone, being abandoned. And so Atticus is in that room with her, not the real Atticus. Again, he's fighting his own demons. And
when he goes in, the first thing he does is not the first thing, but one thing he does is that he says a scripture.
Mm-hmm.
And Letitia's like, I remember saying that scripture to myself when my mother would leave and I'll be home alone.
Right.
So that scripture touched on a traumatic moment of hers.
Mm-hmm.
And then a little later, Atticus forces himself on her and she fights him off, but she still experienced that sexual assault.
Right.
And so that was her trauma. When they leave, all of them leave the room, she is shaken, of course, because she, even though it may not have been real, she still experienced this assault and it really did impact her.
Mm-hmm.
Atticus begins telling his story, and then you had Uncle George, who said, "Don't let these white people think you or make you believe you're crazy."
Right.
As paraphrasing, is not the exact phrase. And Letitia never speaks of her experiences
at all,
but she's looking at Atticus, and even though she knows it was a
figment
of her imagination or whatnot, a fear, whatever, and so, but when she sees him, it still hits on something. It triggers her. And so this really speaks on the vulnerability of Black women and sometimes how we keep our trauma silenced or private, or we are silenced. Mm-hmm. So either we do it intentionally or it is forced upon us, because we still never, I don't think we ever go back to that.
No. And it's important that I'm so glad you brought that up, this idea of telling your story,
right?
Telling your pain. We said, this video podcast is the purpose of making sure that voices are not being silenced.
Right.
So, although we're just commentating, in a way we're making sure that the thought and the memories that happened to her in the show, which right. actually happened to women everywhere, Black women everywhere.
Right.
That narrative is not silenced. And so it's so easy sometimes for us to just not say anything and to hold it in, because that is our way of surviving. But
right.
We have to release that trauma. We have to release that pain in order to thrive. I
right.
think it's going to be like a thing for us, surviving and thriving. Like
it's a thing. When we get to the next episode, we're going to bring that back up.
Yeah.
We're going to bring that back up and get to the next episode. But yes, thriving, and it isn't.
It's a release.
It's a release.
We have to practice, and it has to be a daily practice that we have to do, releasing the pain, releasing the trauma. And we have to think about the fact that we're releasing long-term pain and trauma. This isn't a pain from just yesterday. We're talking about long-term pain and trauma that our ancestors had to deal with, that we are continuing to deal with. Right. And so we have to navigate and push that out so that we can be better people.
Right. And I'm glad now we see more Black people embracing this conversation of self-care, of, even experiencing joy of doing these different things. So I'm glad that we're currently in this environment where you see more encouragement to go to therapy, talk about your pain if you're ready to. It's not forced, of course, but there are more spaces to have these conversations. It's not complete now. We are not at this point where anyone can speak, because there's still silencing happening. But again, that, like you said, that's why we have this conversation. Now I want to get to Whitey's on the Moon.
Yes, the episode title and how it all comes to be. Yes.
Yes. Okay. So at this time, Atticus is about to be the sacrificial lamb for immortality of Samuel Brathwaite.
Mm-hmm. Brathwaite. Yep. Mm-hmm.
And before he did that, he actually got a ring from Christina, because there was a conversation briefly about, how as a white woman, she would never be able to ascend to, be a part of the order. And, she talks about, but I'm as a white woman, so these are the issues. And he's like, but you're talking to a Black man.
Yeah. And
I'm thinking, but y'all haven't spoke to a Black woman yet. So,
really don't get my sympathy.
I'm trying, like no sympathy. But okay, so now while they're doing this ritual of, him being a sacrificial lamb so he can live forever. Not Atticus, but Brathwaite. You see Whitey, you hear Whitey's on the Moon by Gil Scott-Heron being played at the same time.
Yeah.
And so Whitey on the Moon is a conversation about, okay, Black people are suffering. We're dealing with all these issues. We're, trying to survive day to day, but Whitey's on the moon.
Y'all sending people into space.
Like,
you trying to advance technology, but we down here on Earth.
On Earth, trying to get food, living in rat infested places, but Whitey's on the moon. And so this is playing out this whole. It's like, oh, I'm glad you're in space. Congrats. But we're suffering. Us Black people are trying to survive.
We're trying to, pay Peter to, rob Peter to pay Paul. I'm trying to send my kids to school. I'm trying to have food on the table for my family. I'm trying to just wake up the next morning.
Just wake up the next morning, right?
You're concerned about going onto the moon, advancing space.
Right.
And so it's like, it's interesting how you're more concerned about whiteness in space,
right,
than you are present day reality of Black people who are not having, they don't have that privilege. We don't have that luxury to go into space, although we do write about it. So let's be clear. We do write about it, we do talk about it, and we do exist. Right. However, in this moment that Gil Scott-Heron is talking about, that is not what has been put on display. That is not what's being discussed. That is not what is being highlighted. And so,
and even the Black women who helped, this person go to space, even their experiences were not talked about. Well, of course not. In Hidden Figures, there is spoken about, of course, but even then, it's like they're still dealing with racism day to day. Like they were still trying to fight to survive. But at least we have a white man on the moon.
Yeah. And
so that was a critical poem or spoken word that was played at the same time, because Atticus is about to sacrifice his life for the immortality of a white man.
Right. So it's like, you need my blood, you need my body,
right?
Who I am to reinforce to
your power structure.
To get your power structure.
Yes.
So you need me for that, and it's like, even in that, there's a small recognition of the power of a Black person.
Yes.
Because without him, you're not able to get what you need.
Right.
So, even though, as I like to call it, this fantastical crucifixion that's happening, you still need me.
Right.
So let's make sure we're very clear. You still need me, even though you're torturing me, even though you're trying to take me out.
Right. And it goes back to that statement where he was like, you're not indispensable.
Oh, you may be useful, but you're not indispensable.
Yeah. Right. And it really even speaks to how, yes, Black people are powerful, but our humanities and our bodies are disposable.
Exactly.
And we see that in the criminal justice system. We see it in so many different arenas, and you see it here, where he was like, if you go, I'll find somebody else.
Right.
I will, we'll get another Black person to sacrifice.
Yeah.
And it even speaks about the issues, or, not just issues of, but slavery.
Right.
And how we died, but you bred Black women to keep having more. And then you separate our families and then blame us. And you're like, well, you're dispensable. You're too old, or you're sick, or whatever. Or even when you brought our people on these ships, you threw those overboard who were sick. It's okay. We'll get more.
We don't need you. We'll find somebody else.
Yeah. We can get rid of you. And so by even this moment, they really speak of the lack of importance or the lack of significance given to the Black bodies.
Right, right.
And how Black bodies are sacrificed for the power structure that sought to oppress Black people. And so again, you see, going back to why he's on the moon, we're working every day trying to survive and, trying to eat, trying to work just to get pennies on a dollar.
Yeah.
But while we're doing all this, we have our Black women working to make sure you get on the moon.
Right.
You're focused on a white man now on this moon who has like, wow, look how advanced we are.
Right, right.
But you neglect our experiences because we are not indispensable.
Yep. And keep in mind, we're still in 1955. So we haven't changed years. We haven't moved beyond into 2020. We still in 1955, Jim
Yeah.
Crow. We
Yes.
may be in the North because we have traveled up to Massachusetts. So we may be in the North, but there's, as we saw, and as you will see in that episode, there was still racism. There was still segregation. There was still, threats on life. Just because we went in the South didn't mean,
Right.
my life wasn't still in danger or any less of being in danger anymore.
I think a good book on that is, I think I have it, The Strange Career of Jim Crow by Woodward, because it really speaks of, like, a lot of times we think of Jim Crow as only being in the South, but
Right.
racism was everywhere. It was not in one locale. So yeah. That's a big deal.
Whew. Well, we gotta end this on, because there is something traumatic that happens at the end of this episode. But I feel like because we only get so many pockets of joy, we gotta end, with that. So in that, Atticus, Letty, Uncle George, they escape the mansion
And Montrose.
and they find Montrose. There's some things that happened after that and in between that, but we're not going to take away the joy, because there's some things that we could mention that will take away that joy.
Right.
But the fact that they are able to leave out of that space,
Right.
out of this mansion that once gave them joy in the opening scene, but in the end they are able to escape that, and in the midst of a loss there is a gain.
Yes.
So yeah, I think it's important that we acknowledge that, because as much as we will discuss and deal with trauma, I think it's important that we also deal with the joy that comes from these, because we can talk about trauma every day.
Yes, we can.
But we got to make sure we talk about joy just as much, to show the remedy of what does happen. So you got any closing thoughts?
One last closing thought: the importance of knowledge, and knowledge as power. I think that is a big part of our agency. How we use our knowledge, not necessarily just book knowledge or scholarly knowledge of reading, but also practical skills of experience.
Yeah.
How that served them well, even in their escape, even in how they left, and then different things like that. But we'll speak about that more next time. But
so to go to that, one thing we'll close out to say is that Uncle George makes a statement that I think really just kind of close it out for us, that we can take with us in everything. Don't ever let them make you question yourself. That's like facts. That's reality. Don't ever let them make you question yourself. So with that, we want to say a special thank you to Auburn Avenue Research Library in Atlanta, Georgia, for making this vision. This was just the beginning. So there is so much more, but we want to make sure that we give a special thank you to Auburn Avenue for making this vision a reality. And remember this: the past is a living thing. The present prepares us for tomorrow, and the future is ours. And that's it for today's Conversations with Beloved and Kindred. We'll see you next time.
See you next time.